Hello, this is Thomas Damar, and today I'm going to be demonstrating how to bottle and seal your wine or your mead. It's a pretty easy step. I've gone over it in another video describing it, but since I have a chance to actually show you how it's done, I figured a visual representation would be great for those of you who are doing this for your first time. So we're going to walk through the process of starting with sanitizing your bottles, getting them ready for filling them with your liquid, and then corking it and sealing it. And I'll show you how we do that. So I've already washed my hands, 20 seconds, got that all cleaned up. And I've been working on some bottles to get them ready for today. However, I'm going to show you, I've got some other bottles ready to go. These here are bottles that a friend got from the dump, oddly enough. Sometimes a lot of restaurants and stuff have to throw them out. They can't reuse them, so you can find them. So we clean them, sanitize them. I've already put these through a bath where I took all the labels off with hot water, soaked them for quite a while. Now they're ready to be used, except we want to sanitize them before we use them. And what I use is a product called Be Bright. Comes in this little tub here. A lot of people also use Star Sand, which is another good product. Star Sand is a liquid. This is a powder. And then I'm using a 1/4 teaspoon for the measuring on this. And the way that this works is you're going to fill your bottle with hot water. So I'm taking hot water straight from my tap as hard as it will go. I'm going to fill my bottles all the way to the top. So I got 4 of these that need to get sanitized. And this sanitizer acts like a mild acid, and it basically eats any biological matter that is in the bottles. So it's going to kill anything that's living in there. And if there's anything that's in there, it will float to the top. The process that these go through, you'll see it kind of like an effervescent of a bubble. And part of that is it's lifting through the chemical reactions, lifting all of the dirt and scum and biological material to the top to push it out of the bottle. So it's really convenient. Same stuff I use to sanitize and clean all of my other products. I use Be Bright simply because it's what is available locally through my local store. I don't have to order it online. If I was willing to travel another hour and a half away, then I could go to a store that carries Star Sand, which is a great product as well. So I'm just going to take my 1/4 teaspoon that I've got my bottles filled, dump that right in. And then we're going to let those sit for 20 minutes. Once those are cleaned out, then I'm going to dump them out. And then this here is a drying rack. This one's in 2 parts. So this holds the bottles. This is just a tray. That way I can put my bottles upside down and we'll empty it out. You'll also see ones that are shaped like a tree. So it's got a center post with a bunch of rods coming across around the top. People usually use those for beer bottle size. They work great for that size. Not necessarily the best when you're doing wine bottles, which are much bigger and can be a lot heavier. So I much prefer this method here. So we're going to let those sit. And then when it's been about 20 minutes, then I'll go ahead and dump those out. I don't have to go the full 20 minutes. That's for a deep clean. I could leave it in for only about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. It'll be fine because I've been cleaning these. This is just the final sanitization part of the process. So we've got the sanitizer going. Those bottles are in the sink. I leave them in the sink because they will bubble up, as I said, and it'll expand the water a little bit so they can overfill. So just leaving it in the sink, it's just gonna, anything that comes over the top will just go right down to the sink. No mess to clean up. The other nice thing about Be Bright is that Be Bright is a no rinse formula. You do not have to rinse. You can just let it dry and then you can start using it right away. I rinse anyway. I just put some water in, switch it around, and we'll show you that later. So now that we've got some bottles ready to go, as I said, I've got a bunch that I have ready to go for today. So I've got these lovely ones here. They have a nice little red color to them. These are just some specialty bottles I got one year. So I'm going to pull these out. Now what I've got here is 1 gallon of a blackberry wine. It's been sitting in the carboy about a year. It took that long for it to clarify, not because it had to sit in the carboy that long. It hadn't clarified. Now it is. You'll see that there's no sediment in here. Now it's ready for bottling. Now 1 gallon is going to do about 5 bottles of wine, and that's a 750 milliliter bottle, your average size. So 1 gallon's about 5. I have a little bit less than a gallon here, so I'm going to make sure I have 5 just in case. It'll probably do maybe 3.5, 4 bottles. So I've got 3 of those, and I've got 2 of these. Doesn't have to be all the same color. Now people do ask all the time, what is the difference between choosing a clear bottle or a colored bottle? Now clear bottles, this is a smaller one here, right? So the big difference is how much sunlight is possibly going to be coming through these, where you store them, and what type of liquid you have in here. So generally, if it's just a straight mead, something light in color, then I will put it in a bottle like this. If it's something darker in color that we would classify as a red, then I would put it in something darker. It's going to help prevent a lot of the ultraviolet light and everything else from coming in. You should always have these stored in a cool, dark place. But, you know, kitchens, as we all know, have plenty of light in them. So a dark bottle for your darker colors is going to be a lot better for you. There's no rule that says you have to. That's just the general rule of thumb that people have been following for many years. So if you're ever curious about what you should be choosing for a bottle, there's no hard and fast rule. Generally speaking, whites, lighter colors in a clear bottle, reds and darker colors are going to be in a darker colored bottle, and that's why. So I've got these bottles here, have been sanitized, they're ready to go. I've got my carboy here of my blackberry wine that is ready. Now I've put it up, I want to elevate it because when we do our siphoning process, we want to make sure that the gravity is going to be working to our advantage. So what I did was I took the primary bucket that I used to make this, I just flip it upside down, put this on top, and it gives me my elevation that I need to be able to do this. On the stove here already I have going some hot water. This is we're going to be using for the corks and also for attaching our siphon, which I'll show you in a moment. And then over here I have warming up our sealing wax. Now the wax usually comes in bags of little tiny beads, and they're usually about a 1 pound bag. 1 pound bag they say will do about 60 bottles. I've gotten to do a lot more than 60 bottles, but it's much safer to plan on 60 bottles being a 1 pound bag. Now what I do is I use a metal coffee can like this because you're going to fill your bucket here with your wax. You're going to melt it all, but you're not going to be using it all. And you don't want to waste any wax, and you certainly don't want to waste a pot that you would normally use for cooking. So the metal coffee can, which unfortunately is getting harder to find these days, is the best solution because we can heat these up, leave the wax in, and then I have the plastic lid that goes right on top. So I just store my wax in these. Now this one here, you can kind of see a little bit. This is gold, and what I have going here is black. Now I use 2 different colors for a reason. I use black for all of my wines. I use gold for all of my meads. And that's simply so that when they're all sitting in your wine rack and they're all facing you in the row, you can look at the color of the wax and simply know, okay, these are my wines, these are my meads, and then you can select from there. It just makes it really easy visually to tell what is what. Don't have to do it. You can do whatever colors you want. I even go a step further when I do my cordials. If I'm doing them as gifts and I actually put them in bottles that are corked instead of pop tops, I use blue. So I can always tell from a glance what it is that I'm grabbing. So right now I've got some black that's warming up. I've got the heat on real low. You don't want to heat your wax up too hot because you don't want it won't burn the wax per se, but it definitely makes it thinner and runnier the more heat has been applied to it. So what happens is you dip the bottle in, the wax will all just run right off. It's not going to stay on very well. So you want to just heat it up enough to melt it, and then we'll shut the heat off when we're ready to do that. We've got the water going now for the corks. We've got our bottle set up. So now we need to set up our siphon kit and filling kit. So what I have here is a auto filler. This goes in your bottle, and the way that this is shaped, this can go in pretty much any size bottle, one that takes a 7 all the way up through a number 9 cork. So pretty much any bottle this will work in. We're going to be attaching our hose for the auto siphon to this here, and then when we do that, we take the auto siphon. It's going to make this whole thing a lot more sanitary and safer. When you're trying to do siphons without an auto siphon, you have to get the suction going. Many people use their mouth. Not a great thing, especially in today's COVID world. So using an auto siphon, this is your friend. So I want to show you how the easiest way to attach these are. This goes for if you're using a racking cane or anything else for any other types of bottling methods you might be using. But since we've got the water going for the cork, we're going to use it to attach this. So I'm just going to set this in here just for 20-30 seconds. We're just heating up the plastic tubing, and it's going to make it expand a little bit so it'll be easier for it to go onto our device here. It's warmed up, it's nice and pliable, slides right on there. So it's got the ribs, so it's going to catch, so as it cools down it will harden and shrink right onto that. Makes it a much better seal. So just using that hot water for this trick, great trick. I spent a lot of time trying to ram these on there, couldn't figure out why they wouldn't work. An old timer shall be this trick. It saved me so much time and hassle. So just boiling water, warm it up, put it on there. Now the way this is designed is this has these two squeeze tabs on it, and when I squeeze them it pops up, and that actually shuts off the flow. When I want to start filling, I'm going to press that down and it will come up. Now the auto filler that this is great because it's going to automatically shut off before you overflow your bottle. So it takes a lot of guesswork out of what you're trying to do with your bottle. So now that we've got this attached, I'm going to pop that so that it's shut off just for when we go to install it. Now I'm going to slide the stool over. I find that every little bit of gravity I can get to help is going to be a great asset. So we've got our wine here. I've got my lower surface here. We got our bottles ready to go. We got our water is boiling for the corks. We need to grab the corks. So with corks, they are usually determined by the diameter. So when you hear a number 7, number 8, or a number 9, they're talking about the diameter. When you're trying to choose what the right one for you is, I usually use a number 9. So a lot of people will complain about them because they're a tougher cork to pull out because they swell a lot harder and fit in. So it takes a lot more effort to be able to remove them. The reason for that is if I'm going to be having wine that's going to be sitting in a bottle for over a year, I'm going to go with a number 9. If it's going to be for less than a year, I'll go with a number 8. It's a tighter, more secure fit. It's going to prevent you from having any dry outs. If the cork dries out too much, it can shrink and then it will pop out from air pressure from degassing when it comes to your bottles of wine sitting there. So I use the number 9. It's got the best seal on it, but then I go a step further and do the wax, which we'll show later. So I've got these here. I've got 5 corks pulled out. I got 5 bottles ready to go. So let's get started with putting some wine into our bottles. Start with my nifty little red ones here. So I'm going to set my auto filler right down in there, get a good seal. Put my auto siphon in here. Now I've already racked this over from the other carboy that it was in to get it off of the last bit of sediment. So always before you bottle, rack it one more time just to make sure you got anything that's going to be filtered out, siphoned off. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that open. The top of my bottle is below the level of the bottom of my carboy. That's the best thing that you want to try and get. And then I'm going to pump the auto siphon here. You'll see it's going through the hose. Just going to start filling in. Now if you're doing something that's like a champagne or a bubbly wine that you don't want to lose a lot of carbonation in this process, there is a little attachment that comes with this that you put on. It's a little tiny hose with a feeder on the bottom, and it just fills everything in from the bottom up so it's not falling out of the spout down, so you're not degassing any carbonation that you're trying to keep in. Now as I said, the way that this works is with the air pressure it will shut itself off at the correct level. Now what is the correct level? Generally speaking, it's about 2 fingers width from the bottom of where your cork is going to be. So this says I'm going to shut off. You see the wine here. I'm just going to pop that. Now, one thing I am going to do is I'm going to take this little washcloth here, and I'm actually going to put it on the stool here underneath, because you're going to be dripping stuff everywhere. No matter how clean you are, you'll still get it to drip. And that's just an easy way to help clean it up. So I've got this ready. I've popped it. Now I'm going to pull this out. You'll see that there's not pouring out because it's been sealed shut. Put it in my next one and get that one going. And then I do that. So I usually do about 5 bottles, which is 1 gallon per time. Even if I'm doing a 5-gallon batch, I will bottle 5, and then I'll put 5 corks in, then bottle another 5. It just means that there's less time that the wine is exposed to the air between the time you put it in the bottle and the time that you actually get it corked. So it's not a big deal, but having them sitting there open, the less time you can, the fresher, the better it's going to be in the end. Got that one. Turn the heat up on my corks a little bit, get that water going. While that's filling, I'll show you what I use for a corker. So this is a Italian version. So basically you're going to put your cork in here, and then you're going to squeeze this down on the bottle. This is much nicer to use as far as ergonomic strength. You can get the ones where you just push them in, but if you're doing multiple batches and you're doing a lot of gallons, you're going to get tired pretty quick doing that. So this is the best way to do it. I've even had my son, when he was 4 years old, he was helping me with that. He loved being able to squeeze that handles down and be able to do that. And you'll see that there's a little bit of this starting to bubble out the very top here. That's fine. That's the normal part of the process. It's air that is escaping from the bottle, gets released through this top. If I wanted to slow the rate that it fills up, I can twist the knob on the top to close it a little bit more, or spin it the other way to open it up a little bit more. It controls the speed at which this is flowing through. So sometimes it starts bubbling and spitting over, and it's going to run out. Now, this came to an end because our siphon is sitting out of the wine. Because we've already racked it, I'm not worried about any sediment on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and tilt this, get that started again. Almost a 4th bottle, not quite. So what I usually do with these is I would put a temporary cork in that I'm then going to just put in the fridge, or this would be the one that I would drink next. But I also have another option. And that option is to grab a smaller bottle. Kind of like these little beer bottles here, right? And you can put it into there and cork it, because these will take corks as well. But for now, I'm going to set this one aside. I'm not going to worry about that one. So this is all set. My water is now going for my corks. I've got 3 bottles. Just going to slide that back out of the way a little bit. Got my 3 bottles here. And I'm going to grab a slotted spoon, easiest thing to use when you're doing your corks. And I do 3 to 5 corks at a time. I'm just going to plop it in the water. It's going to be about 20 to 30 seconds. You don't want to overcook them. If you overcook them, then they get too soft, and then they can start to fall apart, and that's not what you want. The purpose of doing this is to heat them up enough so that you can be able to squeeze them into the openings of the bottle. Makes them pliable. Got that. So now we have this. I'm going to slide this into that little hole right there, and it holds that tight. Put this on top. Squeeze that down. Now I've got a bottle that's all ready to go. You'll see the liquid is just about 2 fingers width from the bottom of that cork, which is your goal. So we'll do the other two. There we go. Trying to heat down that water since I don't need all that right now. So we've got our 3 bottles ready to go. Let's see. Well, our wax is not quite ready yet. So let's take a look at our sanitized bottles. It's been just about long enough for what we need to do. So now we've got these here. I can see that they're pretty much done with the bubbles coming up through the top. So I'm just going to take these, swish it around a little bit, because with the powdered stuff, it does tend to sit around the bottom rings of these. So you just want to swirl that water around to make sure that any that's left that hasn't been evaporated yet, it's just going to go out with the water. And then I'm going to put those right in my rack to dry. Pretty quick, easy process. Now the other thing I do to help with these is I spin it like this. And you see how the water comes out like that? It's doing its vortex, so that you have air going up through the middle where the vortex is, which allows the bottle to drain faster. So it's just a little neat little trick I figured out. And it also makes sure that the sides of the bottles get cleaned as well, that there's no residue left on the sides as it goes out. So we've got those all set, and in just a few moments we're going to go ahead and do the wax as soon as that's ready. Alright, so now our wax is all ready to go. It got a little too hot, so it was a little too runny, so I just shut the heat off. Wait for a few minutes, let it cool down a little bit. You don't want it too hot. As I said, it'll just run right off the bottle. So you want to get a nice thicker, viscous kind of content to it. So now I'm going to take my bottles, and I've got this heated up. So I'm just going to dip this in top down. A lot of people don't understand when you're doing the bottles, it's not a good idea to try and spoon it and drip it on top. I tried that first. Trust me, it's a disaster. This is the best way to do it, very easy. So I'm just going to dip the bottle in a little bit, just about to the level of the cork. And then when I pull it out, I'm rotating it. And it's kind of hard to see because it is a black wax. But what I'm doing is I'm letting a bead form around the rim, and then it drips off. When that drip slows to a stop, then I can set this up. See? I've got nice coverage on top. It comes down to just about the length of the cork, if not a little bit below, and that's what we're going for. So then we're just going to set this aside to let it cool. You might see that there's a little bit the cork peeking through the wax on top. That's totally fine. It is actually covered with a small layer of wax. It's just not the most amount of it. Corks don't always lay in flat. They get ridges and stuff, and that's what happens. So if you want to try and prevent that, just wait for your wax to cool down just a little bit more so it's a little bit thicker and won't run off as much. So once you have that done, it's ready to go. This has now been wax sealed. Now when I label mine, what I do is I use these. Order them online if you don't have a Staples in town. You can find them online, a variety of different makes. But the nice thing is if you do these here, the 3.5 by 5 inch, it's a really good size for most of your wine bottles. So what you can do is design your own labels on the computer, print these off, but before you put these on your bottle, there's a really neat trick that'll help you. I take spray-on shellac and I spray my sheets down with that with a light coat of shellac. That seals the ink that's in the paper so that as your bottles sit throughout the winter and the summer and the moisture condenses on the bottle, it doesn't actually make the ink run that's in the label. When you put the label on, you just try to make it nice and level. And then when it comes to having to reuse the bottle, all you do is you put the bottle in a bath of really hot water. The wax will loosen up. I just take a butter knife, slit it, and then I just take my hand and pull it like that, and the whole wax ring just pops right off the top of the bottle. You can actually reuse that wax. You can just put it back into your bucket again. So it's really easy to use that way. And then with your labels, I just use a plastic spatula and I scrape the label off the bottle. And if there's any glue or residue left afterwards, I hit it with a little bit of Goo Gone, and you're good to go for your next batch of wine and mead. So that is pretty much everything you should need to know. Now, while I was waiting for my wax to heat up, I did go ahead and start sanitizing the carboy and the autosiphon that we had used earlier. So I did that in the sink here. I got the carboy filled up. It's been sitting. I've got my autosiphon here. It's best to sanitize as soon as you use this, especially later today. I'll be making some more. I've got a bunch of stuff to bottle. So I'm going to go ahead, stick this in, make sure that my valve is open. Get that going through. And just running that sanitizer through the hose in that system in order to empty out this is going to sanitize the inside of your tube. Nice and easy, ready to go. I'll be ready to go for my next batch that I have to bottle. So that's done right away. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to do a deep clean the next time I'm ready to start filling this carboy. I can do another quick 10-minute light scrub with the sanitizer and it's good to go because I've already cleaned it. So that's everything you need to know to be able to bottle and seal and label your wines and your meads. So happy brewing. Hope to see you guys out there.